Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're going to be exploring this idea of crushing your enemies, and it's a concept that, well, pops up just about everywhere you look, from ancient China to, uh, pretty much every corner of history.
Yeah, and it might sound a bit aggressive at first, I guess, but it's a strategic principle with some pretty deep roots.
We're going to be diving into some pretty intense historical examples and, some philosophical theories. We're talking Chinese warlords, powerful emperors, and even some wisdom from like Machiavelli and Moses. So, you ready for this?
Absolutely. I think understanding why some of history's biggest players decided that total annihilation of their opponents was the way to go is a great place to start.
Okay, so the main source we're using for this deep dive is Robert Greene's The 48 Laws of Power. Specifically, we're looking at Law 15, which is crush your enemy totally.
And this law, it might seem extreme, but it really emphasizes the danger of leaving even a tiny bit of your enemy's power alive. You know, that little spark. It can reignite, turn into a wildfire, and, well, it can come back to bite you.
The book actually uses some fascinating examples from ancient China to get this point across. The story of Zheng Yu and Liu Pang. That one really grabbed my attention. It's like a real-life drama with all the power struggles and alliances and, the whole nine yards.
Oh, yeah, that rivalry goes all the way back to the 3rd century BC, and it's a classic example of how showing mercy to your enemies can totally backfire. You see, Hsiang Yu, he was a powerful general, and he had multiple chances to, well, to take out his rival, Liu Pang, but he kept sparing him.
I mean, at first glance, that sounds kind of noble, right? Like giving someone a second chance.
Sure, but in this case, it turned out to be a huge strategic blunder. Liu Pang, after getting defeated over and over, he finally learned his lesson. He decided, no more Mr. Nice Guy. And then he just crushed Xiang Yu completely. And that's how he became the first emperor of the Han Dynasty.
Yeah, talk about a comeback story. But it does make you think, was Xiang Yu really being merciful or just naive?
Yeah.
And I wonder, are there ever situations where showing mercy actually does work out for the best?
Well, that's where things get really interesting. We have to consider the specific context, right? The players involved, their motivations. I mean, was Sang Yu's mercy, was it a calculated risk, a genuine act of compassion, or maybe simply a failure to grasp the long-term threat? These are the kind of questions that make history so fascinating.
So it sounds like it's not just about blindly applying this crush your enemy principle. There's a lot more nuance to it than that.
Absolutely. We can't just take these old stories at face value and, copy and paste them into our lives today. The world's a much different place.
Okay, so then how do we interpret this whole crush your enemy idea in a modern context? I mean, most of us aren't exactly, facing down armies on a battlefield.
That's true, but the core principle of eliminating threats, whatever those threats may be, it still holds true, right? We all face challenges and obstacles in our lives. These could be, you know, rival businesses, negative habits, even self-sabotaging thoughts. So it's about identifying those threats and then, dealing with them decisively.
So crushing your enemy can be more about conquering those inner demons, achieving personal growth.
Precisely. It's about recognizing what's holding you back and taking strategic action to overcome it.
This is making me think about Empress Wu, another figure from ancient China. She's like a prime example of someone who really took this crush your enemy principle to heart, but in a very different way than Xiang Yu did.
Oh, Empress Wu was a force to be reckoned with. She was ruthless, eliminating her rivals and really solidifying her power. And in doing so, she became the only female emperor in China's history.
Yeah, she was definitely not messing around. But her reign, it does raise some interesting questions about the long-term consequences of, using such ruthless tactics.
It does. Did her approach create lasting stability, or did it just breed more resentment, more conflict down the line?
It's a complex issue, really. No easy answers. But it does highlight the fact that we have to consider the potential downsides of using these kinds of strategies, even if they seem effective, at least in the short term.
So, crushing your enemy, it can sometimes have unintended consequences, is that what you're saying?
It's always a balancing act, right? You have to weigh the potential benefits against the potential costs, and you have to consider, the ethics of it all too.
And this brings up another point that I found fascinating in the book. It draws these parallels between this law and the actions of figures like Moses and Mao Zedong, which, I mean, those seem like wildly different contexts. It is pretty fascinating, isn't it? It just shows you that this idea of totally eliminating threats to secure your position, it's been a recurring theme throughout history, across cultures, across time periods. It really makes you think about the different ways it's manifested and the motivations behind it.
Okay, yeah, my brain is doing some mental gymnastics right now, trying to wrap my head around all of this. So I've got this ancient principle of crushing your enemies, and it's rooted in all these historical examples, but it's not just about brute force, right?
Hmm.
It's about being strategic, decisive, understanding these complexities of power dynamics.
You got it. It's about applying this ancient wisdom to modern challenges, but in a way that's, both effective and ethical. That's the real challenge, and that's what we'll be exploring further as we continue this deep dive.
Yeah, this has been eye-opening already. We've gone from
Well,
ancient Chinese battlefields to the realm of, personal growth. And honestly, I feel like we've only just scratched the surface.
oh, there's so much more to unpack here. We need to delve deeper into the concept of mercy, the idea of strategic retreat, and, just the importance of choosing your battles wisely.
I can't wait to dive into those topics. Stay tuned, listeners, because things are about to get even more interesting.
So we've been exploring this whole crushing your enemy thing, and it's pretty clear that it's not as straightforward as it might sound.
Yeah, definitely not.
Yeah.
We've seen how different historical figures like Hsiang and Empress Wu, they approached it in completely different ways and with varying degrees of success, too.
And we've also started thinking about how this ancient wisdom might apply to our lives today, even if we're not, literally out there on a battlefield facing down armies.
Right, exactly. Because enemies these days, they can be all sorts of things like, business rivals or bad habits that we just can't shake, or even those pesky negative thoughts that just keep creeping back in.
You hit the nail on the head there. So how do we actually translate this principle of crushing your enemy into something practical, something we can use to deal with the challenges we face today?
Well, one thing I've been thinking about a lot is this whole idea of mercy. Like, is there ever any room for compassion in this, seemingly cutthroat philosophy?
That's a great question, and it's something that Green actually wrestles with in the 48 Laws of Power. He doesn't shy away from the fact that sometimes showing mercy, it can be a fatal mistake.
Yeah, like that story of Shang Yu and Lu Pang, right? It
Yeah.
really drives that point home. I mean, sparing your enemy, it can give them the chance to regroup and come back even stronger than before.
Exactly. But then again, if you look at history, there are also plenty of examples where acts of mercy or forgiveness, they actually led to, reconciliation or even alliances or even, unexpected victories.
So how do we know when it's right to show mercy and when it's time to just, crush completely? It feels like walking a tightrope, honestly.
It is. It is a tricky balance. And I think a lot of it comes down to understanding the nature of the threat you're dealing with. Is this someone who's just like fundamentally opposed to everything you stand for? Or is it someone who could be swayed, who could even become an ally, with the right approach?
That makes sense. If someone is truly, out to get you, out to destroy you,
Mm-hmm.
maybe mercy isn't the best strategy.
Right. In those cases, sometimes, you got to take decisive action, protect yourself, protect your interests.
But then there might be other situations where showing compassion or offering a second chance, maybe that could actually be a more effective way to crush your enemy, in a sense.
Exactly. Sometimes doing something unexpectedly kind, it can disarm your opponent, make them question their motives. It could even, earn their loyalty potentially.
It's like that saying, keep your friends close and your enemies closer.
Yeah.
Maybe sometimes turning an enemy into a friend, that's the ultimate power move.
Yeah, I like that. And it definitely takes a deep understanding of, human psychology. And you got to be able to see things from different perspectives.
It's like we're playing 4D chess here, trying to anticipate every possible move, every counter move.
I like that analogy because in a way that's exactly what we're talking about. It's about strategic thinking, being adaptable, and being willing to change your approach depending on how things unfold.
So it's not just about, blindly following a set of rules or, just taking these ancient bits of wisdom and applying them to our lives without any regard for the modern context.
Exactly. It's about taking these historical examples, these philosophical principles, and using them as a starting point, and then, figuring out how to adapt them to our own individual situations.
It's about understanding those underlying principles of power, strategy, human nature, and then applying them in a way that's, Well, in a way that's both effective and ethical.
You're getting it. And that leads us to another important concept that Green explores, the idea of this strategic retreat.
Ooh, okay. Tell me more about that. It sounds intriguing and maybe a little counterintuitive. If we're supposed to be crushing our enemies, why would we ever want to retreat?
Well, remember what we were talking about earlier about choosing your battles carefully? Sometimes the absolute best way to win is to not fight at all, at least not right away.
So it's about knowing when to hold back, when to, conserve your energy, conserve your resources, and wait for a better opportunity.
Exactly. Think of it like a chess game, right? Sometimes you gotta sacrifice a pawn to gain a strategic advantage later on.
Or even, lure your opponent into a trap by making them think you're weaker than you really are.
Exactly. A strategic retreat, it can throw your enemy off balance, it can make them overconfident, and then bam, it creates an opening for you to strike when they least expect it.
It's like that classic scene in a martial arts movie where the hero pretends to be defeated and then, boom, they spring back up with a surprise attack.
Huh. I love that analogy. It really captures the essence of a well-executed strategic retreat. It's not about giving up. It's about playing the long game, using every single move to your advantage.
This makes me think about another historical example, but this one's from a different culture. Sun Tzu, the ancient Chinese military strategist, he talked about choosing your battleground wisely and only engaging in conflicts where you have a clear advantage.
Oh, yeah, Sun Tzu, he totally understood that warfare is as much about strategy and deception as it is about, brute force.
So even in ancient times, people realized that sometimes the best way to crush your enemy is to outsmart them,
Sure.
to outmaneuver them, to use their own strengths against them.
Precisely. And that brings us right back to the heart of this whole crushing your enemy principle. It's not always about physical domination or annihilation. It's about using your intelligence, your cunning, your understanding of human nature to achieve your goals.
It's about playing the game of power, but playing it effectively and ethically.
Well said. And speaking of ethics, there's another side to this whole crushing your enemy thing that we need to address,
Yeah.
the internal battle.
Oh, right. Yeah, we've been talking a lot about external enemies, but what about those inner demons that we all have to deal with from time to time?
Those can be the toughest enemies of all. Our negative thoughts, our self-sabotaging behaviors, our limiting beliefs, all that stuff can really hold us back from reaching our full potential.
So in a way, crushing your enemy could also be about mastering our own minds,
Yeah,
conquering those inner obstacles that keep us from living our best lives.
absolutely. It's about recognizing those negative patterns and then taking decisive action to break free from them.
It's about developing self-discipline, cultivating a positive mindset, and replacing those self-defeating thoughts with beliefs that empower us.
Exactly. And in a way, this is where the idea of crushing your enemy becomes even more relevant for our modern lives, because even though we might not be facing literal armies on a battlefield,
Yeah.
we all have to wage war against those inner demons that can sabotage our happiness and our success.
This is so insightful. We've gone from like ancient Chinese battlefields to personal growth and self-mastery. It's amazing how one concept can have so many different applications.
It is, isn't it? And it just goes to show that even these, ancient ideas, they can still be incredibly valuable for us today if we're willing to, look beneath the surface and figure out what those underlying principles are.
I feel like we've only just scratched the surface here. There's still so much more we could explore.
Oh, absolutely. But for now, let's maybe take a step back and think about what we've learned so far. What are some of the key takeaways for you from this deep dive into crushing your enemy?
I'm still kind of processing everything, but one thing that really stands out is the importance of context. We can't just blindly follow these ancient principles without thinking about the specific situation we're in.
I agree. It's about understanding the nuances of how power works, the motivations of the people involved, and, what the potential consequences of our actions might be.
And it's about being adaptable, recognizing that there isn't, one right way to deal with every challenge, every obstacle.
Exactly. Sometimes mercy's the best approach. Sometimes it's a strategic retreat. And sometimes you got to just go all in and eliminate the threat completely.
It's about being a master strategist, not just in those, battles we face in the outside world, but also in those internal struggles that we all go through.
And, maybe most importantly, it's about using our power wisely, ethically, and for the greater good.
This has been an amazing conversation. I feel like I have a completely new perspective on this whole idea of crushing your enemy.
Hmm.
So we've been digging into this whole idea of crushing your enemies, and it's become pretty clear that it's not just about, you know, brute force or just being aggressive all the time.
Right. It's much more nuanced than that. It's about strategy. It's about understanding the dynamics of power. It's about picking your battles. And, it's about figuring out how to apply these age-old principles to the complexities of the world we live in today.
And as we were saying earlier, sometimes the smartest move you can make is actually to retreat, you know, to
Yeah.
hold back, conserve your energy and resources, and wait for a better opportunity.
Exactly. Remember that advice from Sun Tzu about choosing your battleground carefully.
Hmm.
That applies not just to literal warfare, but to any kind of, conflict or competition you might encounter.
So even if you're up against a really formidable opponent, retreating doesn't necessarily mean you're giving up. It could actually be a sign of strength, a way to, regroup and come back even stronger.
Absolutely. It's about recognizing when the odds are stacked against you and having the wisdom to say, okay, maybe this isn't the right time or the right place for this fight.
It's kind of like in boxing, right?
Mhm.
Sometimes you need to dodge a punch to avoid getting knocked out. It doesn't mean you're weak, it just means you're being strategic.
And that strategic retreat can buy you valuable time to analyze your opponent's weaknesses, to come up with a new plan of attack, or even to wait for them to, slip up and make a mistake that you can capitalize on.
It's like that classic movie scene where the hero seems completely defeated, but then, bam, they reappear at the last minute with this, like, brilliant counter move.
Huh. I love that analogy. It really captures that element of surprise that can be so effective when you execute a well-timed strategic retreat. It can totally throw your enemy off balance and make them start questioning everything.
And speaking of questioning things, one of the biggest takeaways for me from this whole crushing your enemy discussion has been that we can't afford to underestimate our opponents. And that goes for, both the rivals we face in the external world and those inner demons we all wrestle with.
Oh, absolutely. Sometimes our most formidable enemies are the ones we create in our own minds. The negative thoughts, the limiting beliefs, the self-sabotaging behaviors, all those things can really hold us back.
Yeah, it's so easy to fall into those negative thought patterns, you know?
Yeah.
You start thinking you're not good enough or that you're just not capable of achieving what you want in life.
Right. But the truth is, we all have the power within us to crush those inner enemies, to break free from those limiting beliefs and, really step into our full potential.
It's about recognizing those negative thoughts for what they are. Just thoughts. They don't define us, and we don't have to let them control us.
And it's about actively choosing to replace those negative thoughts with ones that empower us. Building a positive self-image and having that unshakable belief that we can achieve anything we set our minds to.
It's like we're training our minds to be warriors, fighting back against those self-defeating thoughts and ultimately coming out on top.
And the more we practice that kind of mental discipline, the stronger we become and the less power those inner enemies have over us.
It's almost like we're building this inner fortress, an impenetrable shield against all those negative forces that try to drag us down.
I love that image. It really captures the strength and resilience we can build by, going through this process of crushing our inner enemies.
So this whole crushing your enemy thing, it's about so much more than just taking down external rivals. It's about mastering our own minds, conquering those fears and insecurities, and becoming the best versions of ourselves that we can be.
Exactly. And when we can achieve that level of, inner mastery, nothing can stop us.
Wow, this deep dive has been an incredible journey. We started by exploring ancient history, then we got into the psychology of power, and, along the way, we uncovered some really valuable insights into the strategies we can use to overcome challenges and achieve our goals.
And I think one of the key takeaways here is that this ancient wisdom, even though it might seem kind of ruthless on the surface, can actually offer us a lot of valuable insights into human nature, power dynamics, and the strategies we can use to navigate the challenges we face in life and ultimately, achieve what we want to achieve.
We've learned about the importance of strategy, the power of mercy, the wisdom of knowing when to retreat, and, the transformative power of conquering those inner enemies that can hold us back.
And at the end of the day, it's all about using our understanding of these principles to create a more fulfilling, meaningful life for ourselves and for the people around us.
This has been The Deep Dive, and we hope you've enjoyed this exploration of crushing your enemies.
Until next time, remember to choose your battles wisely and never underestimate the power you have within you to overcome any obstacle.
Keep crushing it, everyone. But, remember to do it with wisdom, with compassion, and with a healthy dose of strategic thinking.